Why can't your Corvette C8 do a burnout? Well, the answer may surprise you. So a question that I get asked semi-regularly often is, why can't a Corvette C8 do a burnout, or most other mid-engine cars for that reason? Well, I'm surprised that this far along into the C8 being out, more people still don't understand exactly why, but I suppose there's actually a pretty good reason as to why. And there's actually a simple explanation, and it's not exactly what you think it may be. So to do that, I'm going to compare two cars that are very common nowadays, and I picked these two cars specifically, a C8 Corvette and a GT500. Excuse my crude drawings, I know they're terrible, but that's not the point here, okay? So the reason that I compared these two cars is because both a C8 and a GT500 both come with a dual clutch transmission. A lot of people think that the reason that a Corvette, or the C8 Corvette, can't do a burnout is because of the DCT, and that's just simply not the case. Might add to it a little bit, but that's really not the main reason as to why. So to talk about this a little bit more, I'm going to explain pretty much some forces that go along with it, okay? So you've got a couple different forces that are going to explain as to why the cars are like this and why they can't do this. Number one is going to be anchoring force, then you're going to have propulsion force, and then you're going to have clamping force, okay? Your anchoring force is going to be where the weight is in the car. Your clamping force is going to be where the brakes are applied, and the propulsion force is obviously going to be the engine overcoming it to do that burnout, however much power the car can put down in order to actually spin the tires and light them up, so long as the front tires can hold them in place. Now, to do that, I'm going to begin by explaining the GT500 first. So a GT500 has your traditional layout, or whatever you want to call it, as far as where the engine and transmission goes. Now, both cars come with a Tremec DCT transmission. The C8 is an 8-speed, the GT500 is a 7-speed. I'm using these because these are two kind of equal type cars that are widely available. Now, there are plenty of other cars that obviously come with DCTs, such as supercars and things of that nature, and most of this stuff still applies to them as well too, but I'm going to use these two for my broad explanation here, okay? So, the GT500 is going to have most of the weight of the car in the front or towards the front because the engine is in the front, okay? So you got the engine right here, right in the front, and then you have the transmission right behind it, okay? So this whole big casing right here is where most of your weight is. So going down on that, forcing down on that, that's going to be your anchoring force. Now with the C8, here's the difference, okay? You've got most of the weight towards the back of the car, including the engine, transmission, rear subframe, fuel tank, the differential that's incorporated into the transmission, and the whole slew of other stuff that's back there. On the GT500, the only thing you really have back there is a fuel tank and a rear subframe. The majority of the weight is going to be in the front. On the C8, the majority of the weight is going to be in the back. So everything that you had here is kind of flipped in that sense. So in the front, you really have nothing in the front of that car. I have another video you can put up that I put up that shows just how easy it is to remove that front tub in the C8, and there's really nothing behind there, especially the fact that there's nothing in the front, like say on an E-Ray or something like that, in which case it would be a moot point anyways because that car is all-wheel drive, but there's nothing really up front there to hold any weight. So in the back, you've got all that weight, engine, transmission, subframe, fuel tank, everything that's back there, okay? So when you have all that, you've got all your anchoring force going in the back, and you don't really have that much anchoring force in the front here. Nothing is really pushing the front wheels down into the ground, so to speak, to dig into the ground so it can get traction to hold it in place. Now on the GT500, you have that because you have all the weight in the front holding it there as well too. And the GT500, much like the C8 too, the larger brakes are going to be in the front. Now the C8 has more braking force in the back because it's a mid-engine, but the front brakes are still larger, just like the front brakes are significantly larger on a GT500 as well. So, now you've bought a C8, you've got a supercar, and you're kind of upset, hey, how come this thing didn't come with a common feature that a lot of other GM cars come with, like the Camaro and things of that sort, called line lock? Now, to understand line lock, in case you don't know what that is, that's basically a system where the computer can now take line pressure in the brakes and only apply it to the front two wheels. It locks the two front wheels but leaves the back completely loose. So that way you're not burning up the brakes as you're doing a burnout, like in say a Camaro. A Camaro has this feature, like the 6th gen Camaro, okay? So with line lock, that doesn't come on the C8 for the reason is because of all the weight in the back. Like I said, if you were to lock the front wheels on the C8 using a line lock system and leave the back wheels unlocked, here's what's going to happen. The C8 has plenty of power to do a burnout, okay? It can, it's got more than enough. Now, if you lock those front wheels, what's going to happen is all that weight in the back is going to get all that traction on the rear tires, which happen to be wider than the front, so it has more surface area, so it can dig into the ground a little bit easier too. But it's going to basically, there's not going to be enough anchoring force in the front to keep that car planted because all the weight is in the back. So all your anchoring forces and all your propulsion forces are in the back. Now, because there's no anchoring force in the front to dig the front of the car kind of into the ground to anchor it in place so that way it doesn't push itself forward, all that's going to happen is that eventually, it's going to get traction eventually at some point, unless you've got so much crazy power to the point where it's just spinning to the wheels where there's zero traction, which a traditional C8 doesn't, although a ZR1 might. Now that those are out, we see those, but we'll yet to see if that happens. Now, so with that, because you have no anchoring force in the front, the back wheels are going to get traction and going to try to push the car forward at least a little bit. Well, just because those tires are locked or the brakes are applied, it's not going to keep it in place because it doesn't have enough force to keep it down. So basically what's going to happen is the front of the car is going to keep going forward and it's going to be pushing it forward because of that propulsion force, but the front tires are still going to remain still, and you're basically just going to be pushing the car forward without the front wheels moving. And it's going to look silly and it's going to look stupid. That's one of the main reasons probably why they didn't put line lock on a C8. So it doesn't really have anything to do with it being a dual clutch transmission. I know a lot of people like to automatically say or assume, oh, it's because it's got dual clutches that are fighting each other or something. No, that's not the case. That's not how it works. There's plenty of information out there to describe this otherwise, and if you know how a dual clutch transmission works, that's really not what's going on here. Now, not to be confused with a lot of cars that have a trans brake. Neither one of these cars have a trans brake in which you have forward and reverse gears kind of fighting each other at the same time, but that's a whole nother thing, and I'm not getting into that. It doesn't really apply here, okay? So if you did that, you're going to have all that propulsion force going forward, but those front wheels are going to be locked, but they're not going to be able to push down into the ground to keep the car stationary because all the weight is in the back. All of it's back there gripping the rear tires and forcing it forward and down to the ground. Unlike the GT500, where the weight is in the front and there really isn't weight in the back. Now, because there's no weight in the back, all that propulsion force can now overcome the fact that there is no anchoring force back there, and it can light up the tires. That's a quick and easy, basic, simple explanation of it. I'm sorry it's not a little bit more technological, but as you know, my videos are not really known for my wonderful editing skills or things like that. So this is just an idea for you to get a good understanding as to why a C8 can't do a burnout. Now, yes, there are some videos out there where you can see somebody in a C8 or any other mid-engine supercar or whatever doing a burnout to some degree. Now, there are a few exceptions to this rule. Some of these just have overwhelming amounts of power and maybe have other modifications that allow them to do those types of things. But there aren't really too many that you can think of. Now, if you look on the internet, you probably will be able to see some pictures or some videos somewhere of a C8 doing a burnout. However, it's not going to be that big tire smoking burnout that you see a lot of other cars do, like your traditional muscle cars. Which, by the way, is another reason why the C8 doesn't do a burnout, or isn't meant to do a burnout, because it's not a muscle car. It's a sports car slash supercar at this point. And now with the ZR1, it's kind of even entering hypercar territory at that point. Not even entering, it is in hypercar territory. So that is just a basic idea as to what's going on. There are some videos out there where you can see C8 doing burnout, but it's not the same. It might chirp it for a little bit and get a little bit of smoke, but that's really about it. There is one video out there where you can find a C8 doing a burnout, a big smoky burnout that is just very obvious. And that was put out a long time ago, probably like 4 or 5 years ago by Amelia Hartford. Now, she had that video and she did that with that car. She was trying to do burnouts and it just couldn't be done because of everything I just explained. What she did was, and if you watch the video, she's got her car, the car that she calls Phoenix, that it's doing a huge burnout. The car's still white at this point, doesn't even have the orange graphics on it. This is pre-modification and everything. But you see it doing a burnout in her parking lot, but then she clearly, even she shows in the video, she's not trying to hide it, she blatantly points it out. It's because the back of the car is ratchet strapped to a Connex box, huge shipping container, and that's what's keeping it from going forward. So yeah, she was able to do a burnout with that. So because there was no other way to do it, it can't be done. Unless you have such an ungodly amount of power in the back of that car, spinning it to the point where it can get no traction whatsoever, you're just not going to be able to do it. The car doesn't have enough power otherwise to keep it at that point. It's going to get a little bit of traction because it doesn't have that much where it can just free spin the tires and not get any traction at all, especially with all that weight in the back. So, pretty simple video that I wanted to put up today just to answer that question. I haven't really seen too many people or anybody really do a write-up on this or a video as to why they can't do it. And a lot of people are kind of wondering, hey, how come I spend all this money on a car and I can't even do a damn burnout? Well, that's why. The physics of the car just won't let you do it. It's just what it is. It's a mid-engine car. That's one of its disadvantages, if that's what you want to call it. So anyways, I hope this helps. I hope it explains some things. In case you're wondering anything else, feel free to shoot me some comments or ask me some questions. But other than that, I hope this helps. Good luck.